True.
But if we can rise to a much higher level and we can get to these love or gratitude, like you said, and these higher level frequencies, then we have more power. Then we can unite towards something more beautiful and something more positive that we're all working toward.
Yeah. Such an important pivot. Yeah. So true.
Yeah. It really, it's important. It's a cool thing to look at.
You just mentioned the alignment. So the subconscious being the body. You said your language is inner body, outer body,
inner self, outer self, and higher self.
And then higher self. Okay.
There are different people use different languages. I wanted to use something a little different than most people had used, so that. But there are obviously some experts that Gary Zukav uses the language I do. There's different. Like if you're into the Huna religion, they use Amaku and Ulipili and Uhani. They use different languages for it, but. Basically, it's the way to look at it is assuming you had a soul before you were born, that a party that existed before you were born, and that will exist after you die. Like there's a consistent something part of you.
Is that the inner self or the higher self?
And that's your higher self. That's your soul, right? And I'm going to kind of qualify this by saying this is where it's in my belief system. This is not necessarily. There is definitely a lot of psychology talking about subconscious, conscious, and superconscious, right? And there's a lot of research related to that. When I'm getting to the soul and the transcendent part of the thing, I'm starting to venture into what does Brownell think versus what does the science say. So
sure.
I want to be clear, like
too, yeah.
I just want to be clear because I like, I'm not a scientist. And I'm more of a storyteller, right? But I researched a lot of science for this book. I quote 70 different scientists. So, it's like science heavy. So I like to be clear when I'm saying this. So anyway, the way I look at it is we have the soul. The soul chooses a body to become us. So the higher self or the soul chooses the body, and then the body is the subconscious, and then the combination of that becomes who we are. So that's the conscious self or the outer self.
Okay.
So again, it's the same, subconscious is as inner self, conscious is outer self, and superconscious is higher self. So that's how I
gotcha. Okay, so that makes sense. So essentially, your inner self is the one that's going to have the desire for either more flow, more alignment, whatever the wish is. The inner self is going to have the wish, and the body needs to be in alignment with that through it feeling fun, it feeling possible in that way, if I could throw that in there possibly.
Another way to look at it is you need all three selves to be in line with your wish, right? When you're making a wish, in fact, that's one of the key principles is to make sure all three selves are in alignment. So your body has to be in alignment, which is, I want to make it fun. I don't want it to be too much stress on me. I don't, I don't want to take away the pleasures that I have in life. When you're talking about gratitude, sometimes we wish for something and then all of a sudden we realize we lose the things that we now appreciate because we're taking this new job that will work so hard, and then our body might be tired. So it's important that our body is in alignment. Our conscious self is generally the one making the wish, but then the higher self, like, is this part of my purpose? Is this doing good for others? Is this does this have a bigger purpose? Getting that Ferrari, who is that going to help? Right. Other than the Ferrari dealership, maybe not. Right.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I was going to ask for clarity of how you would qualify alignment with the higher self. That makes sense. Purpose-driven, service to others, as well as not just service to ego. In other words.
Right.
Does that sound right? Yeah.
Right. Okay. And that's where one of the principles in the wish, when you're talking about how to make a wish, one is the anthropology of choosing a ritual, knowing what your ritual is, having something that's going to remind yourself, because that's part of our DNA, like the rituals. The things that we've done, and it's so much fun to do the research of like all the cultures around the world have different wishing rituals. So it's very, very cool to look at that.
That is cool. Yeah.
Yeah.